This is a four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive car with a brake bias that I like. The car actually can rotate on the brakes. Might be due to the aero balance. The car has a 55-45 weight split as well, so it might be part of the factor in the brake bias capabilities of the game. I guess with cars with the more rearward weight distribution have a more rearward brake bias. And the brake controller is set to 5, no modifications. The aero balance is set very close to 50-50 aero balance with the wing, under tray, a little bit of a rake on the under tray. It's favors stability at high speeds, which the highest speed this is tuned for is about 120, 125 or something in that range, miles per hour. And this is the gearing. And the suspension. So I specifically chose sports soft tires because a rally car would have road legal tires. And as well, I've tuned this power output, not display, power output to be around 320 horsepower with an 86% output adjustment on the computer and a power restrictor at 70% restriction, or 70% power. And so that's because I'm going to compare this car to another Ford in the WRC 10 game. So with these particular settings, the front spring does exactly as it's expected, which is the softer it is, generally, the more oversteer the car oversteery the car becomes, with limitations obviously. And the front anti-roll actually improves the oversteer with soft front suspension. And counterintuitively, this rear spring, even though it's both front and rear wheel drive, it has rear driven. The wheels are driven in the rear. The stiffer spring rate actually produces more understeer in this car. I guess there's not enough torque to produce power oversteer with these tires. I don't know why it doesn't want to rotate. Maybe if I use different tires, it'll rotate better on throttle. But at this much horsepower and that much torque displayed on the left, it will not power oversteer. And the differentials, so I got the car to rotate a lot on the brakes, so I locked up the rear braking sensitivity a little bit. I mean, I'm up to 50, it's not a little bit, it's a lot, to make the slide more progressive. So instead of it snapping into a slide, it progressively rotates into the slide. And this front braking lock actually improves the braking rotation by preventing the inside rear wheel from locking up. And I've already gone over pretty much the whole differential thing in other all-wheel drive settings videos. And these are just values to improve rotation off throttle. I have a little 1 point, this could be at 5, it could be at 6, it doesn't really matter. Because the car will not rotate on throttle, I have this differential initial torque set to allow the car to rotate off throttle. That's the only way to get the car to rotate mid-corner. However, I would prefer it to rotate on throttle and tune in some initial torque in the rear, because that'll prevent the car from rotating too quickly coming off the brakes. So a lot of times the car will, while trail braking to corner, when you're coming off the brakes, it'll actually snap oversteer because there's not enough initial torque lock. Well, this car can do that. It's mostly stable in general driving conditions, but in a weight shift situation, left-right weight shift situation under the brakes, which in this track there is one, it can snap oversteer on the second turn. So if it's a left turn into a right sharp hairpin, at Alsace, that's where this track is, the car has a tendency to snap oversteer if driven improperly. So onto the drive. Just going to drive it. So I have to wait on throttle. I can power through the turn if I'm gradually giving it power, but if I give it too much power, it will understeer. Let's see if I can get the car to rotate on the brakes. There's the rotation on the brakes, nice and smooth rotation, not snappy. So because the car is tuned, the transmission is tuned for about 120 miles per hour, it's a little oversteer in this high-speed section. It'll slide like that. Nice rotation on the brakes. That was poor entry. Mostly just trying to show the rotation on the brakes. Have to lift off here. A little bit wide at the apex. Stay in fourth. The lift throttle. I don't want to lock the car into understeer by turning the wheel too much. So I would expect the car to actually oversteer on throttle. So there's a little bit of snap oversteer coming in onto the right-hander, but I caught it by coming off the brakes all the way. Absolutely no oversteer on throttle. Oh. So the car doesn't perform exactly as I would like, but it's closer to what I would like, and I will show a better car in WRC 10. I forgot my controller was off, so I didn't record any voiceover on this part of the video. And this is a car that I like, or how I'd like an all-wheel drive to perform. The suspension, differential, brakes, and transmission. So the differential is similar to what I had before in my controller settings video for this game as well, WRC 10, except the preload is locked up. For some reason it's a lot more unstable than I remember, at least with the controller. So I'm using the preload to make it more stable in off-throttle situations. And the suspension, this would be a 9.75 kilogram spring. It's labeled in a way that's I think at newtons per meter, so it's a really high number. There's no decimals. I don't know how these spring rates would relate to the natural frequencies in Gran Turismo. I could do a calculation with an online calculator or something. I just don't feel like doing that. And should get to the rear spring rate right there. Okay, that's an 11 kilogram spring, and it's with the grippy tires. They're street tires though, and the dampers they feel close to critical damping. I don't know exactly if they're over critical damping, under critical damping, or exactly critical damping, but they feel close, and that's how I prefer the front end to be, is close to critical damping with a relatively soft spring. So for really grippy tires, a 9 kilogram spring is not that stiff. And I should get onto the rear compression damping real soon. There it is, and I like to have the rear compression damping a little bit softer than the front. What that does is it produces transitional understeer or transitional stability, where the front end loads up faster than the rear, so it effectively has less grip than the rear because the front end reaches its max loading faster. But it's called a tire loading response time. The front end has a faster tire loading response time, so it is more stable. And I'm still talking about it, or I was talking about it in the video I was trying to record. I don't know what I said here. The ride heights, they're equal ride heights, no rake. That's because the car is very oversteery at high speeds, and the cambers are specific for that ride height. They're at maximum of 5, and they look like they're within range. I don't really know how many degrees they are within an operational range. And the anti-roll is at maximum of 20 in both front and rear, and they're too soft. So the car is actually really wobbly, and you'll see an example of what wobbly cars do at high speeds.
80. Flat right tightens into left 5 short into right 5.
So I'm mostly driving,
into kinks,
or I drove the car easily, or I wasn't pushing too hard, as I'm trying to say.
30.
And like I said, it's really wobbly, but it rotates really nice. I hit the curb there. And this is how I prefer to get the all-wheel drive cars in Gran Turismo to perform like. Really good rotation, a lot of off-throttle rotation. Not so much snappy oversteer, which I would tune out. How I would tune out the snappy oversteer in Gran Turismo is with the dampers. But the dampers are limited to a maximum of 40 compression and 50 rebound. And that's apparently realistic for GT cars to have somewhere around 50% critical damping. But for softer springed cars, I need more critical damping to allow for the slower suspension movement, but have enough suspension movement to prevent the car from understeering too hard with a really stiff front spring.
And left 6 long, tightens 3, don't cut, 50.
So I had trouble with the mapping of my handbrake. It's in a different place on the wheel than my previous wheel, so these hairpins are a little sloppy.
Left 3 tightens, don't cut, and left 5.
And another hairpin coming around the next turn. Understeered on the exit there.
Right 30. Left 2, cut, opens.
I think I hit the wall.
Into square left, cut, 30, flat right,
A little bit of understeer here. Broke too deep.
Caution, hard brake, square right, small cut, 100.
Don't want to cut this corner too much. There's a ramp on the inside that causes the car to roll. And those signs do a lot more to slow the car down when you hit them, so I try not to hit those signs anymore. So here the car wobbles. I get into some sort of not discussion, but I'm talking about something, and the car wobbles, caused me to hit the inside bank, and then I crashed into the barrier there.
Right tightens into left 5 short into right 5.
So here we go again. The car is pretty stable at speed. It could be more stable. I don't know what's different about this version of WRC 10 versus the previous version of WRC 10 where I played with the controller, or even WRC 9. I remember running the preload fully open on WRC 9. It's also in my previous videos in WRC 9, the settings I was using.
And right 4, brake for square left, don't cut.
So I do much better here to get the car down slowed earlier, rather than trying to maximize the brake zone. And I notice I make a lot of errors trying to maximize the brake zone, and I completely blow the corner or just have a really bad mid-corner, which compounds into a really bad exit. So the phrase slow in, fast out, it really helps for driving in this rally game. Taking it easy through this fast section. It should be 5th gear and then 4th gear into this turn.
3, don't cut, 50. Caution, hard brake, hairpin right.
Much
right
tighter on
in,
the apex
30.
there. And here hit the wall.
Left 3, tightens, don't cut, and left 5.
I think it hit the wall again in the next hairpin.
Hard brake into hairpin right, 30. Left 2, cut, opens.
There it is again.
Into square left, cut, 30. Flat right, 80. Caution, hard brake, square right, small cut, 100. Square right, don't cut, 80. Flat left into right 4 and left 4.
There's not much to say as we've already seen this part of the track.
Keep into right 4, tightens, long and flat left, 80.
Still very wobbly. The car wobbles left and right there. I had to catch it. I had to have to turn down the steering center lock or center force
right, 30.
to make the car wobble less.
Right 6 short, narrows and
I
right
tried
4.
to get the feedback to feel
And left
more
3,
like it has
tightens,
power
80.
steering.
Left 5 short,
The car
100.
is very sketchy to drive through this fast
Left
section.
5, very long,
Very
tightens,
wobbly there.
30. Right 5 short,
Again,
into
due to the
left 5,
soft
50.
anti-roll stiffness.
Right 3, 30. Left 5, hard brake into square right, 30.
These high-speed sections, even though the car is wobbly, is
Left 4,
very
200.
fun. This is my favorite tarmac stage right now in WRC 10. I think there's
3 and caution, hard brake,
another
square right.
tarmac stage, or another, what do you call it, area.
And left 3, 30.
Country? Yeah, I think
Right
it's in a
5,
different
hard
country.
brake for hairpin right, 150.
Coming up on the end of the stage here. Just a couple more hairpins. Very
Caution,
slow.
hard brake
Didn't
for
go fast
hairpin
enough to
left,
pull the handbrake
200.
there. A little too much throttle.
Right 3, 150.
I still need to work on the force feedback to make the car feel a little bit better.
Hairpin right, small cut, 30. Left 2, don't cut.
And
30,
one more
over
turn.
Flat right into finish.
So as sloppy as a drive that was, it still performs better than the Gran Turismo all-wheel drive cars. I think it's just due to the tire physics. As you can see, there's a lot of differential lock. The tires are sliding more. Maybe I need to put different tires on the Gran Turismo car. Anyway, that's my rank. I was in the 40s before, now I'm in the 400s. I need to improve my rank. That's pretty bad. Anyway, on to the next one.